Hi guys and girls, this is the video that most trading content never makes. Not because it's complicated, it's actually the simplest part of the system once you understand it. But because most traders, they don't want to talk about risk. They want to talk about entries. So here's the truth. Your entry is maybe 20% of the trade. The other 80% is what you do after you're in. Where is your stop? Where is your target? How much are you risking? When do you move the stop? When do you take profit early and when do you let it run? Every one of those decisions has a systematic answer in the IVT framework. By the end of this video, you'll never place a stop based on a round number or a gut feeling again. So let's get into it. And I have to say, my old mentor, my old trading mentor, he always asked me, okay, do you have an entry? Yes, I have an entry. So where is your exit then? And if I couldn't answer, the trade wasn't good enough, So let's look into it. The first rule of stop placement in the IVT system, it is stops go below the AVAP level. That defines the thesis, but not below a round number, not 2% below entry, below AVAP. And if that is broken, it tells you the institutional thesis is wrong. And here's why. AVAP is the institutional cost basis anchored to a specific event. If you enter a bullish trade because price reclaimed the March 3rd AVAP, then the below March 3rd AVAP is the level that makes the trade valid. If it breaks back below it, the institutional bias who drove the reclaim has lost control. So the thesis is broken in that instance, and you exit. Let's look at a real example. So we have here the dollar yen, and this is the latest trade I did. And I think it explains in details how I did this. The first time we had an S2 entry. And when that happened, it didn't really close above. I wasn't sure I wanted to go in. The fundamentals were not there yet. For me, it could have been a short. So I just stayed out of that S2. And sure enough, it went down and touched the low value area. And there, when it peaked up and pierced through the AVAP, that was my signal. And it was even an S3 with 9 confluence. That was my signal to go long. So what did I do there? Well, I started the trade at the close of the 4-hour candle, and I put my stop loss underneath the value area. And as a start, that is not a very good risk to reward, but you need to have room for volatility when the trade starts. At first, I want to be sure that it is going my way. So I have the confluence that, or the confidence that the trade is going my way. Had this one closed beneath, I would have exited the trade again. It didn't. It pierced through, but it went up again. So it was a perfect situation. This could also have been a limit order that I put there instead, and then I would have been my position would have been even better. But I didn't. I took the candle close here on the 4-hour. So what happened next is it touched the AVAP and it got to my first target. And if you look back here on the close of the 4-hour candle here, it actually closed above that close, which means we had a higher high. So what I did in that situation, I took off 33% of my position and I moved my stop loss to the AVAP. So now I know, because I know that the AVAP has been tested and it's been approved as a floor for now. And one more rule that I have: never move your stop further away once you're in. Which means if my stop was in the low value area and the price goes all the way down, I will never lose my stop more, because my thesis is wrong, okay? So I think what is so strong about this system is that you see the institutional level. So a lot of traders that I've mentored over my years, they always look at a chart like this and say, but why didn't you go in here? And I understand that. And I was that trader for a long time, trying to catch the falling knife. And when you actually succeed in this, yeah, in hindsight, I should have seen this as a base and bought this area. But there's been so much research on this. Every time you try and catch the falling knife, you will probably only win by 30%. I can't remember the exact number, but let's go back to the process. It's important that we have the VWAP. The VWAP is our entry signal, and it is our definitely exit signal. So if we look at the trade, it then based a bit, and then it hit my second target and even and even my IVT zone. So this told me again, I will take some more chips off the table. So I took another 33% off. And then what I did, I moved my stop loss up to target 1. So now I'm in profit. That's great. A great feeling. You can just manage the trade. And sure enough, it got a little exciting right here at this point. But as I have already paid myself and I had moved my stop loss, I didn't have any problems being in this trade. And it ended up in the value area high, which was also corresponding with my target 3. I was out. So this is a very good example on how to put your stops, put your targets, and just read the IVT. So let's talk about reading the IVT on the way up. The input is the composite score. And here's the logic. We have a composite +7 or +7 to +9. That's a maximum alignment. And this is a high conviction setup. You can run full size within your parameters when you have this. The composite 4 to 6, that's a moderate alignment. It's a good setup, but not everything is confirming. So you run around 60 to 7% of your normal size. If your composite is only 1 to 3, you have a very weak alignment. There's a lean, but not a full read. So if you take the trade at all, you run only 30 to 40% size. It's a speculative position, not a conviction trade. And as you see here right now, the composite score is -2 out of 9 on the US dollar. So even though, let's say that it comes down here to the 157.3, even though beforehand I would probably have thought, okay, we are in this IVT zone, that is a good continuation trade. But I don't play like that anymore. This is not compelling at all for me. I don't want to take the trade because the composite score is not aligning. And especially now when it's negative, I have no long positions at all. That's very simple. So the reason this works is that the position size should reflect your edge. When the edge is high, a high composite, high volume compression, aligned bias, you want exposure. When the edge is thin, you want less exposure to the same levels of noise. So combined with the AVAP stop, your risk is fixed by the AVAP distance. Your size is determined by the composite, and those two inputs together give you a position that's calibrated to the actual setup and not your emotions. So targets in the IVT system are set up at the next AVAP cluster above your entry. It's not a round number, it's not a double my risk at the level where institutional sellers from a prior date are likely to positions. Every significant date on the chart, not in the USD, but it can be earnings day, it can be a major high, it can be a regime shift. It creates an AVAP that acts as a potential resistance or support level. When you're in a long trade, you're looking for the next cluster of AVAPs above price. That's where supply will likely come in. And the practical rule is your first target is the nearest AVAP cluster. I briefly mentioned managing the trade. I want to go into it in more depth, because once you're in a trade, there are 3 scenarios that can unfold. Each has a defined response. Scenario 1. The trade works immediately, like in this USD yen trade. Price, it moves in your direction. The volume compression, it starts to release. The composite holds or improves. And your response is hold to your first AVAP target. And then you take off the 33 or the 50% to break or move stop to break even. You can do many things. I like to pay myself, but I have friends and colleagues that are just basically moving the stop loss. But I like to pay myself. There is scenario 2 that the trade goes sideways. So it basically consolidates. Price chops around your entry. The volume compression stayed elevated. Composite doesn't improve. And your response should be hold as long as price stays above your AVAP stop. Sideways with a high volume compression coil still intact is not a broken thesis. It's the coil that's just still loading. So the worst thing you can do here is exit early out of impatience. And then what's the move happen to you? And I know you've probably tried this before. You go into a trade, it goes against you, and you think, oh no, what's happening? And you go out just to see it go back up again. It's the market. The market likes these moves. So that's why we use the AVAP. Okay, scenario 3. The trade moves against you. And if it breaks below your AVAP stop level, your response should be exit. You don't hesitate. You don't hope for a recovery. Hope is not a plan, okay? The level that defined the thesis has broken. The thesis is wrong. Take the loss, reevaluate, and move on. The brief helps you manage all 3 scenarios. Every morning, the IVT read gives you an updated composite score, a volume compression for every instrument that I'm watching. Think about it this way. If you're in a trade and the composite score, it drops from +6 to +2 overnight. That is a signal to start managing your stop. If it holds +7, the thesis is intact. You're not managing on price alone. No, you're managing on the read. That is the big difference. So I hope this gave you something when it comes to targets and managing your trades. And as always, write to me on Substack if you have any more questions. The next video in this series covers sector rotations, how to read the V13 grid for clusters that signal a regime shift before price moves. So I'll see you there. Trade safe. Bye.